Hello and welcome back. Thanks for coming by again. Today I figured we'd talk about atheism and being an atheist. Now, as I understand it, the basic theology of atheism is that God doesn't exist. Or, yeah, kind of these, I don't know, I wouldn't really call them an atheism, an atheist necessarily, but they're the types that say, well, there might be something, there might be nothing, and if there is something, everybody be happy about it, and I guess that would be agnostic or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to stick more to the atheist side of things. So, people who don't believe in God. Okay, well, I get it. But in order to be an atheist, there is like a whole bunch of things that you have to frankly believe in to be an atheist. Some of which are just beyond the pale. The first atheistic idea or atheist idea is that everything came from nothing, but it was always there. The kind of Big Bang theory. So all the particles in the universe basically got together, formed one big critical mass, then exploded. You got your Big Bang, and then the universe stretches out from there. And it's just like, well, okay. I mean, if we're looking at everything in the universe short of actual life, okay, maybe I can kind of see it. The big problem I have, though, with that so far is how did all of the atoms in the universe get together to begin with? Because when you go out into space, and technically we're in space, we're on the Earth, and the Earth is in space, so, we're in space, but we're not off the Earth in space, you know what I mean? So, space itself, as I understand it, that you can pick any direction you want to pick, and go for an eternity and another eternity and just on and on and on and on and on. And you never, ever, ever will reach the end of the universe. That in itself is a feat to kind of behold, right? Because I guess they have to measure time then from when they think the Big Bang Theory happened, or they know when the Big Bang Theory was brought up, but when the Big Bang happened, and nobody was there when it happened, so they're just guessing about it anyway. But you would have to think then that this, how many Big Bangs does it take to get to this bang, right? This could have happened trillions of times in the past. How would you know? There would be no way to tell. There is no way to tell. So, that's just one thing, right? We're not talking about actual life itself. We're just talking about rocks, minerals, water. Where does everything else come from? Water itself is, one hydrogen, two oxygen, H2O, okay? Well, even if you have impure water, what is the impurity in the water going to be? Well, it has to be other minerals, calcium, salt, gold, silver, rhodium, all the stuff that's on the periodic table of elements, right? So, where do you get the life from? You can't, there is no combination that we can make up on the periodic table of elements and in some way electrify or give life to have anything kind of growing on its own. So if indeed we come from, single-celled organisms, that whole evolution thing, I'm just saying you have to go a really, 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 really long way to believe it. You just do. It's like I can't help people necessarily see that the creation speaks for itself. You know what I mean? I think that in our world where we can watch movies like Star Wars or any of the Star Trek shows and movies, we have this idea that to be able to travel from here to the nearest galaxy, I think is right around 1,000,000 light years, right? And so that means you'd have to travel 1,000,000 years at the speed of light to get there. Closest, right? Everything else is far, far farther away than that. So, I mean, I guess I could just be a big rube here and just not be able to wrap my head around it. But, I mean, you're talking about unfathomable distances. And the other side of it, too, is I don't know how they measure the distances from here to other galaxies, but that seems to be a long shot, too. That we can easily figure out stuff in our own universe, our own solar system, how far away the sun is, how far away Pluto is, how far away Neptune is, all those things. I can believe that. I can see that. But man, we can't fathom 1,000,000 years at the speed of light to get to the nearest galaxy. You just can't fathom that. Not really. You can kind of conceptualize it, but I don't think anybody can really grasp the full scope of it. Our lifetime, if we're lucky, might be top end 110 years old, 115 years old, and you're done. There's nobody on the earth today that's going to live 1,000,000 years to see anything. It's just not going to happen. But in the modern culture that is today, they throw it about all over the place. It's accepted almost like it's common fact, common knowledge. Well, the universe is so big and everything in it came from this one singularity, because using the word singularity sounds really cool. And when all the particles in the entire universe got together, it hit a critical mass and then exploded, a big bang, and shot everything out. So it goes beyond the pale. And that's just like the easy part of atheism, right? That's just the easy part. But again, you're looking at the creation to be able to deny it. So at the heart of atheism is people who deny God's creation. It's like, okay, I can, we get into Darwin, right? At one point here, the theory of evolution, which is his book, but we don't ever talk about the full title of his book, because if we did, it'd kind of give away that, he was a racist. But at any rate, to start from all life, to start from a single cell organism, and then to, over the course of billions and billions of years, turn into a multitude of species on the planet that I'm sure probably, I'm just going to ballpark it, there's over 4,000 individual species of living creatures, including man, on the face of the planet. I mean, I don't know. And so, that's all coming from that one single cell organism. It's like, okay, well, how does the single cell organism then come into being, right? How do you take the rocks and minerals, the water, and then come up with a cell, right? And then once you do all that, the cell's got to eat something. Of course, I guess we'll give them a mulligan here, and we'll say that the cell divided, and then before it ate anything, right, it just divided. And then how would it even know it needed to eat, So maybe they divided again, and then at one point or another, some of those cells had to eat some of the other cells. So I guess that's mini single cell cannibalism. But maybe when they divided, then you had, one cell would be different than the other. You got Cain and Abel cells. And Cain slew the Abel cell and ate it, and then divided again. I mean, I don't know. It just is. The farther that you go back in time, where you try to conceptualize from there to here, it becomes as unfathomable conceptually as it is to travel for 1,000,000 years at the light of speed just to get into the next galaxy that's closest by. And then when you start trying to branch it out from, okay, you start out with that single cell organism, and then you move into all these others, and on and on and on. It's like, okay, here's an idea. How does a tree that creates acorns and walnuts, and how does it know that an animal is going to come by and eat its fruit and plant it somewhere else? A squirrel will come and get walnuts, and they'll take them and they'll bury them. I mean, they bury peanuts, they bury everything, right? So they're going to eat a little bit of what they get. They're going to bury the rest of it. And wherever they bury the rest of it, eventually they're going to forget it, or they're not going to live long enough to get to their store. And those seeds will then grow up from that point. How does a tree even know to do that? Or like a sweet berry bush, like a blackberry bush. Yeah, they tell you, well, the bush is making the sweet berries to encourage animals to come eat it, and then the animals will go and poop out the seeds somewhere else, and the plant will have a chance to then essentially propagate from that point on. Okay, I mean, it's factual. It's how it happens. But how does the bush know to do it? How does the bush know that there's any other bushes like it out there to begin with, when you consider that the bushes will flower, and inside the flower, you have the stamen and the ovum, all the different parts of the flowers. I mean, they have to be pollinated, right? So pollen has to get down in there to propagate the plant, to make seeds, to make berries. If you've ever grown a tomato plant, you know dang well that you got to get them pollinated. So how does the plant know then somewhere out there, Barnaby, is another plant just like it that's going to take its pollen and make little baby plants with it, so to speak, or the possibility of little baby plants with it? You can cut up a plant, make a salad with it all you want, look at it under a microscope, and you're not going to see anything on the plant that you could ever possibly identify as a way that it communicates. There's not, like, as far as we can tell, a sensory part to the plants where they feel pain. Obviously they have an idea about water, but I'm just saying, it just, so when we get back to the single cell organism, though, I'll get far back from all this complicated stuff that's here now. You're talking about a single cell organism and a body of water that may swim around for as long as it likes and never, ever, ever run into another one like it or any food to eat. We have not found any life on the planet that does not require some kind of food or other energy source to keep going. I was listening to a video the other day, I think weirdly enough, about single cell organisms, that there's kind of this weird definition of life that definition of death is, since we're all chemical compounds and reactions, that death essentially is all those compounds and stuff coming down to a neutral state. So they're no longer active, and therefore that's death, and this, that, and the other. And so in order to prevent that from happening, you've got to eat food. That way you're still, I don't know, man. I don't have my head that far up my butt. It's interesting. I'm sure around a campfire, it's a spooky story. Ooh, you came from the sea, and there's no God, and this, that, and the other. Say, oh man, whatever. I think for a lot of people, frankly, they had better pray that they're right, because it's not going to be pretty when you die and you find out that God's real. I mean, I can understand not really being sure, not really necessarily knowing God and all that, but at one point, just objectively looking around you and seeing just the diversity of life. And yeah, I know you hear, back, 300 years ago, there were far more species on the face of the planet than there is today. Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't alive 300 years ago, and nobody alive today was alive 300 years ago. And 300 years ago, there weren't that many people counting the different species of anything on the face of the planet. So, at least not to the ability that we have today, Have there been animals go extinct? Sure. So when we look at the variety of things that are around, we talk about, or they talk about a food web, it all mashes together. There is that web. There's the mesh of it all. Again, how does the tree know? How does an ear of corn know? How does the corn plant know? You just, it gets to be ridiculous. A tree can't see. You would think if it could see that it would, get up and walk away from roots or from tornadoes and stuff at the roots, It simply can't be. That's not even that's wholly jumping over the idea that where did the particles come from to begin with to make the Big Bang? How did those come about? You get this idea then, or some of them will say, well, it's just always been, right? That's not, that doesn't make any sense. Always been, well, that what that sounds like more to me then is what you're talking about is God. God's always been. From everlasting to everlasting, right? The same as he was yesterday, he is today, and will be tomorrow. I mean, the argument is far greater than which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Obviously, the chicken. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's just, the atheists out there really have got a long way to go to convince me. I don't see it. I can't conceptualize it. I'm not saying I'm perfect or the smartest person out there. I'm just saying, get out a piece of paper, put it on your desk, and then draw a dot on it. And you can put zeros as far as you want to go off the edge of the paper on that same paper plane forever and eternity, through the earth, out into space, and beyond, and whatever else it passes through. All zeros right next to each other, and never, ever, ever run into the end of the universe, left or right of that. It doesn't matter what direction you go in, you're going to go on for eternity. Period, paragraph. There's no two ways about it, as we understand space. And if there is an end to space, the question then becomes, well, what's beyond that, whatever's blocking it, right? There has to be something on the other side of it. The more and more I think about atheism, the less and less feasible it becomes. But there's a lot of people out there that just say, yeah, no, I don't believe in God, and this, that, and the other. In fact, I saw a video here today of a lady whose thesis basically was that she's not necessarily looking forward to death, but she's not afraid of death either, which is good. You shouldn't be afraid to die. But that her thought process is that when you die, then you're going to go to the same kind of familial place that you came from to begin with, and everything will be okay. You'll feel all right, this, that, and the other. And you don't have to believe in anything necessarily to get to this kind of quasi version of heaven to begin with, which is really her way of just saying she doesn't believe in Jesus or in Allah for the Muslims, whatever. That's pretty much it. Okay, well, why not just come out and say that you're an atheist and that you're not going to be bothered by your death because you'll be dead and you won't know it? Because, we come from nothing essentially. It's a sperm and an egg and get together and start dividing. So, if you didn't know what life was like before you were born, then how would you know what life would be like after you've died? So it's like, it's more of an agnostic argument, I would say, but it's still a denial of God. It's still a denial of Christ. I mean, I understand, not everybody will believe in Jesus. I get that. I think a lot of people don't believe in Jesus or believe in God because they think that they believe in their own righteousness and in their own perfection, or they believe in man's overall righteousness and overall perfection, I guess is a good way to put it. And so therefore, because we're already righteous and already perfect as a group of beings known as mankind, then, kind of all these different ways to get to heaven that really, I don't know. It's a long way to go, in my opinion. For me, though, I mean, I know I'm not perfect. I'm like way not perfect. I don't see that man is perfect. I don't think man is very righteous. All of those things. I just don't think that makes it. I think that, God set forth, hey, this is the way you need to live. If you live outside those bounds, then you're going to make me mad. After all, God being the creator, he has the right or the ability to say you need to live this way or that way or do these kind of different things to please me. And then knowing that, we fall short of those expectations, then God being that kind, loving God that these weird kind of agnostics kind of believe in his perfection and in his mercy, right? He goes ahead and sends his son to show you how it's done. Okay, this is how you live life perfectly, and that's what you have to do. And knowing that you're not going to be able to do that, then turns his son into the sacrifice for your sins so that you can make it into heaven. So when you have the idea that, when you come to accept the idea that man is not just, man is not perfect, man can't survive under his own righteousness, that God has to step in and show us how it's done as his children, as his creation, then you come to understand a little bit better, yeah, okay, that's why Jesus came, right? Granted, a lot of generalities. I don't have my Bible with me. I'm not, necessarily going to go through all of that. But I'm just saying that obviously man can't get it done on his own if God doesn't come down to show us and do the things that he did to kind of give us that way to go. So it's just, atheism to me is laughable. I don't know if atheists believe in Santa Claus or not, but you might as well, if you're going to be an atheist, and believe that God doesn't exist and be able to look at all the wonderful things about creation and life of itself and say, okay, there's no God. I look at the complexity of the human eyeball and no, there's, that's all, voodoo evolution, I guess. Now you got all that stuff and it's just like, okay, it might make for a fun cartoon, showing stuff kind of grow up and do its thing and turn into, a single cell into two cells, into a frog, into a fish, into a shark, into, an elephant, whatever. And then we can look at all these so-called Neanderthals, which are just humans. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And they're not even telling you the truth about all that stuff. Anyway, that's all I got for today on the atheism side of it. I don't know if I'll print this video or not. I'm just kind of freeballing it here. And God bless you guys. Thank you for turning in. Share the video if you like. Help spread the word. God bless you and amen.